Hi everybody, well it only seems a few short weeks ago when update 1.14 went out to the public servers for DayZ, and today we've had the news that 1.15 has gone live on their experimental servers. So this is kind of the beta version of the game, a testing version of a future build of the game that goes live on experimental servers for PC and Xbox, not PlayStation unfortunately, so that we can test it on these servers or on our local PC servers, give Bohemia Interactive a load of feedback, and then it will go live to PC, PlayStation, Xbox probably in 3 to 4 weeks time. This is a very exciting one, and what I'm going to be doing in this video is going through the blog post. We'll go through the patch notes, and we're going to go through some of the new guides that Bohemia Interactive have introduced, because not only are they adding a few goodies in with this update, but we are getting the ability on console to be able to mod the weather, which is very good, mod some starting parameters, so things like stamina and building clipping when you're building buildings, so that's very, very interesting. And also very, very importantly, they're giving us an easy way to spawn in buildings, not using events or not using any fancy stuff, but having a file where we can call in buildings and have their rotation, their X, Y and Z position and the rotation, and spawn them in. So here we go. Without further ado, let's go through all this. So 1.15 experimental release posted by Adam Franku on November the 4th, 2021. So excited for this one. So excited. That's the new female character that's coming in. Greetings, survivors. It's only been a few weeks since we released the biggest update of the year, but here we are again, this time with the first experimental release of game update 1.15. This article will cover the parts of the update we'd like the most feedback on, while avoiding any talk about the new content, which you can find by exploring the experimental servers or by visiting our official change notes for PC and Xbox. One of the update's major additions is the new server-side gameplay settings. These new files within the mission folder aim to make certain gameplay adjustments more accessible without the need for modding the game itself. For now, these include control over the following systems: weather behavior through various parameters in CFG weather.xml. How exciting! Imagine Livonia with no rain. Player stamina system in CFG gameplay.json. Placing and construction restrictions in base building in CFG gameplay.json. So I think this will mean that, when you're trying to build a wall, say next to a building, and it won't quite fit because it's clipping, or it's clipping on a tree as you're building a watchtower, we'll be able to turn that off. So this may mean it can make it on console. You could put things like doors and gates on existing buildings in a way that we couldn't before, but we're going to have to play around with that. Support for overriding other gameplay parameters currently stored within the server for config to simplify the approach. We're already looking at expanding the customization options for even further for future updates. If you already have any feedback or requests, do not hesitate to share your thoughts on the feedback tracker. So people, visit the feedback tracker and tell them we want the ability to change the starting loadout, which means access to init.c on console. Documentation for all these new settings will be available around the stable release of 1.15. This game update also focuses on improving feedback to the player through the addition of on-screen directional hit effects. These accompany the already present red vignette and are positioned in a way that will help you locate the direction from which you are getting hit. Work on these effects also allowed us to start working on the on-screen effects of bleeding. This will greatly improve feedback on the bleeding, which is currently lacking, especially when you're playing without the HUD. While we're pretty excited to bring this into the game, we're going to need more time to develop it, therefore it will be included in a later game update. Another thing we've done is balance the player's character's stomach, water and energy storage. Our primary goal was to decrease the strength of a character's water and energy reserves, which had previously allowed players to stay alive for hours without the need for food or drink. These changes include, it's now easier to get out of dangerously low energy and water levels, but harder to retain high values for a longer time. So what that means is the old trick of being able to eat raw meat and contaminated water at full health is going to be more dangerous to do, because you won't know if you're right at the top. It takes longer for water and energy to process from stomach contents, slightly lower damage to health during dangerously low levels, adjusted thresholds to better reflect the actual state of water and energy levels, primarily to give sufficient time to react. So I guess this means that the the water icon and the hunger icon, the little apple and the little can't remember what the water one is, the thirst one. They're probably going to, when they're full, that's probably going to better reflect the fact that you are full. There's also a lot of smaller changes that greatly improve the overall experience. Fire mode switching now has audio feedback, mainly useful when playing without the HUD. Performance during shooting has been greatly improved. Some firearms had their fire rate increased to match their real-life counterparts more closely. Unconscious state from a firearms hit has been prolonged, compared to 114, not the original 112 values. Okay. Head torch can be worn with most headgear. Takes glasses instead of the headshot slot. Excellent. Most of the small bushes now yield long sticks after being cut down. Excellent. Night vision scopes now have the ability to switch between day and night modes while in hand. Ski mask clipping with headgear has been solved. Finally, we've added a new female character, and there are some new toys to be found in the world as well. We're not going to tell you what they are, but I will. We hope you're going to enjoy this update, and we're looking forward to meeting you on the experimental servers during our Friday playtests. As usual, if you run into any issues or have some feedback for us, do not hesitate to contact us through our official channels. On behalf of the DayZ team, Adam, fantastic. So again, make sure there'll be a link to this blog post in the description below the video that you do use the feedback tracker. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the patch notes. Now, there will be spoilers here. Trust me, okay? So if you want to find stuff out, stop the video. But here we go. So what have they added? The OR A1 assault rifle, the OR AX assault rifle. So these are the FAMAS, I think. The 30-round OR magazine, the hunter vest, the UI indicator when being hit. So that's a bit Call of Duty, isn't it? A craftable barbed wire baseball bat, a craftable sword-off Lamass, so you can take your FAMAS and saw off the barrel. Great, turn into like an SMG. A new female survivor, we saw her, didn't we? Sounds for switching the fire mode of a firearm. Daytime settings for night vision optics. Metal wire can now be crafted out of barbed wire. Yeah, cool. So, new gun, great. New magazine, new hunter dress, great. Let's go down here. Here we go, the server. So here we go. Added CFG weather.xml for configuring weather. We're going to look at that in a minute. Added CFG gameplay.json for configuring several gameplay elements. Added CFG gameplay.json can define custom object spawner JSON files to populate the world without the need to use central economy. So that's cool. So that's about putting buildings into the world without having to put them there using events. Added basic XML errors, fixed crash fixes for the Linux server build, fixed some mission files were not distributed in the lowercase form, changed weather init removed from default init.c, now done automatically, changed food decay parameter is now a multiplier instead of a 0 to 1 toggle, meaning decay can be made faster or slower, 0 still switches it off. Tweaked Linux server now also shuts down. No issues, road flares and torches are missing their particle effects, the OR rifle might miss certain sounds. So that's the AUG, isn't it? It's the AUG rifle, sorry. So, before we go on to the more detailed stuff, let's go into the fixed. Fixed. Open store option for the Livonia DLC was stuck after entering the settings menu. Ski masks and balaclavas were clipped with several pieces of headgear. So that's cleaned that up a bit. Fixed the server error caused by specific attachment slots. Electric appliances would always make plug-in sounds when the user was connecting to the server. The sawed-off version of the BK-43 had the wrong fire mode names. Added a missing bed in the big yellow medical tent. Fixed bag collisions in the yellow medical tents. A killed chicken couldn't be picked up properly in old cases. The fishing hook was not visible on the boonie hat on the ground. Ooh. If a player died while in surrender stance, the death animation was played twice. Base building parts could become indestructible under specific circumstances. The CR-75 could not be damaged by gunfire. Small items could not be picked up from specific positions in car wrecks. Livonia bunkers were missing textures of fallen leaves. Changed. Grenades can't be pinned anymore once the fuse has started. Right, so once you pull that pin, that's it. Adjusted the thresholds for energy and hydration levels. Food now takes longer to process in the stomach, so when you eat, it's going to take longer for you to feel full. Slightly reduced the health damage caused by dehydration and starvation. Adjusted weapon fire rates and recoil. Added new variants of muzzle flash for more variety. Secondary cooking processes were adjusted to not ruin the food in all cases. e.g. boiling already boiled food. Change the weight of tents to be more realistic. Oh, I wonder if that means they're heavier. Head torches now count as eyewear, so they can be worn with other types of headgear. Excellent, because you would get a bit cold, wouldn't you? You take off your shanker and you get cold. Remove ghillie wrap attachment slot from the sawed-off BK-43. Cool. It is now possible to craft rags using the shovel or farming hoe. Like to see you do that in real life. Bushes now drop more long sticks. Excellent, because you can always break a long stick into a short stick, can't you? Dry bags can now be repaired with the tyre repair kit. Oh, good. Removed grenade armour and cut protection from the high capacity vest. Unconsciousness caused by firearms lasts longer. Reduce the inventory size of the carp fillet from 2x3 to 1x3. Interesting. So, headlines there. So we've got the new FAMAS rifle. The AUG, got the new AUG rifle and stuff like that. So, but it's really about these new config files. So here we go. How is this going to work? DayZ weather configuration. File name will be cfgweather.xml. Overview. There are several ways of adjusting the behavior of weather within DayZ. Modding script weather state machine, overriding world data, calling mission weather true on weather object in the mission init file, using the cfgweather.xml in the mission folder. So this is what we're going to be doing. By default, all vanilla side missions are using the scripted weather state machine. If you want to adjust the weather behavior, we recommend to use the cfgweather.xml. So we're going to have to change the weather on console. The following example shows a full and later partial CFG weather XML file alongside with the description of each parameter. All of these parameters do reflect the weather script API, which can be found in 3_game/weather.c. Here we go. So weather. Reset and enable are a boolean and therefore supports 0 or 1 or true or false or yes and no. Reset controls whether you want to load in the weather from storage or not. Enable controls whether this file is enabled or not. So that will be whether when the server restarts, does it remember the weather that you had before the restart. Overcast. Initial conditions of the overcast target value time to change how long it will say. So the current is that, the time in seconds and the duration in seconds. What is the range of the overcast value? How long does it take to the overcast to change from one value to another? How much should the overcast change? Fog. Initial conditions of the fog, target value, time to change, how long it will stay. Current value, actual equals 0.1. What is the range for the fog value 0.1? So the limits. The rain. Wind and storm. Right, okay, so we're setting values and then overcast or fog or rain or and wind and then these values change over time, don't they? So the weather condition changes over time. They either get worse or they get better. Everything except for reset and enable is a float and can be read either as an attribute or an element, so it is possible to format the file even in a following way. Weather reset enable rain limits can be written as weather reset equals false. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do some experimenting with this, and we're probably going to have to wait for a video from either from Don or something from Wobo or something from Balshad who tell us how to use this, because it's not completely obvious, but at least we know the files, it's there, so hopefully it means we can turn the rain off all the time. So there we go. So that's weather configuration. Gameplay settings. What are gameplay settings? Modding and customizing mission file, the init.c, are very potent tools for server admins. However, neither is very user-friendly, nor are they accessible to everyone, especially people on console. Gameplay settings provide a way for server admins to tweak the game's behavior by simply modifying values inside the gameplay settings JSON file. Initial setup. The gameplay settings are located in blah blah blah. Before you start using it, you need to copy this file to your missions folder. Once there, you can freely modify any of the values inside. To enable usage of the file, you also need to add a new parameter, enable CFG gameplay file, to your server.cfg file. From that point on, whenever you run the server, the CFG gameplay.json will be loaded and used by the game. Now that's interesting because server.cfg, normally we don't have access to that on Nitrado console servers, I don't think. So they're either going to give us access to server.cfg, or in the settings for the server, that's where we'll have access to it. So let's have a look. So let's see what we can play around with. So on this file, we've got the type is integer or Boolean. So integer means it's a number, Boolean means it can be words or numbers. So to start off with, you can check. So you can have the internal parameter keep track of the version file. So I guess that just means make sure people are playing the latest version. Disable base damage. Disable container damage. So they're things we've already got control of within the Nitrado web interface, haven't we? You can disable that, so we know that. Disable respawn dialog, we know that one. Disable personal light, we have control over that. Here we go. Stamina weight limit threshold. This amount of stamina points divided by 1000 will not count towards stamina weight deduction. This amount of stamina points divided by 1000 will not count towards stamina weight deduction. Okay. And stamina max. Maximum stamina setting to 0 may produce unexpected results. So I kind of oh, here we go. What's this next one? Multiply used when calculating stamina points deducted from max stamina giving the player load. Minimum size of stamina cap setting to 0 mate. Modifies the rate at which the stamina is being consumed during a sprint. Modifies the rate that stamina is being consumed during crouch sprint. Okay, so I think that with these things here, we'll be able to have stamina, unlimited stamina servers, because you'll be able to give people loads and loads of stamina, so it won't matter how much they're carrying, you'll be able to sprint all the time. So that's good. Well, if you want that sort of server, that is. So that's excellent. Lighting, what type of lighting we use during the night time? Again, we have control over that already. Here we go. So these are the important ones. Disable colliding, allows placement when the hologram is colliding with objects in the world. So this is to do with when you're placing objects, or especially when you're building, I think. Because the problem we have at the moment is if you're building something like a watchtower and it clips with the tree, you can't carry on building a lot of the time, or you can't place it. And hopefully with this, it means we'll be able to place things where they would clip, which means you'll be able to more easily put things like gates on existing buildings. That's what I'm kind of looking forward to be able to do, and we'll have to see. So allows placement when the hologram is colliding with the player, allows placement where playing would cause clipping with the roof, allows placement on dynamic objects and otherwise incompatible base, allows placement of garden plots despite incompatible service type. So you could have a garden plot inside a building. Allows placement despite exceeding roll, pitch and yaw limits. So again, this is all being able to basically put down holograms or things where you can't do them at the moment. A good example maybe, like when you've got a barrel and it won't let you place it because you're near something or something, but you can drop it, or you'll be able to place it. Allows placement with limited height space. Allows placement underwater. Interesting, isn't it, all this stuff? So again, we're going to have to get into servers and we have to experiment to see what we can do with this. Allows placement when clipping with terrain. Allows construction when clipping with the roof. So we have to build through roofs maybe. Allows construction when colliding with objects in the world. Now that's a really important one. I think that's the one that's going to enable us to use the existing building features in DayZ on console with buildings. So you'll be able to add a gate or a watchtower right on top of an existing structure, which is so important, I think, to DayZ, because my argument has always been with building in DayZ that in the apocalypse you wouldn't go and build yourself a fort in a field. You would be adapting existing buildings, wouldn't you? Prevents construction when player gets below a specified range. Oh, now that's interesting. So what does that mean? Prevents construction when player gets below a specified range. Disable distance check. That's interesting. I'm not quite sure what that means. We're going to have to see, but that could be something to do. You can make no build zones. Interesting. File name of the JSON files containing spawner data, which is we're going to cover next. So some really interesting options to play around there with the gameplay settings to do with building and stamina. So finally, let's have a look at the DayZ object spawner. What is the object spawner? The object spawner addresses the need of our community to add additional detail to the world through a list of map objects together with their position and orientation. Objects from such lists are spawned into the world at the start of the server mission. So we're not using events to spawn buildings in, which can be highly unreliable. We're going to be using a separate file. Please note that spawning a lot of objects this way may have an impact on both the server and client performance. You know, if you build a city, DayZ's not going to run very well. How to create and use a custom spawn list. Enable CFG gameplay.json. See the gameplay settings documentation, which we just looked at. Create a new JSON file, for example, spawn data.json, in your mission folder. Copy the contents of the template below. So this is basically how you'll spawn stuff in. So we can look at this straight away. So you create the file, you turn it on, and you have something like land, wall, gate, whatever. So we're spawning in a gate at these coordinates. So that's the X coordinate, that's the Z coordinate, so that's left and right, up and down on the map, and then you've got Y, which is your altitude, I think, and then you've got YPR, your pitch and roll as well. So that means we can angle things as well. What will be interesting about this is if you don't have the Y coordinate, whether it just drops it onto the ground. Hopefully it will do. I think it will do. Edit the contents as needed. Do note each object's entry needs to end with a comma except the last one. In the CFG gameplay.json, locate the object spawners R and input your previously created .json as a parameter. Details. The CFG gameplay.json contains a file name array, object spawner array, blah blah, where each JSON file contains a list of objects to be spawned in the world at the start of the server mission. So the idea here is that you won't just have one of these .jsons with all of the things you want to spawn in, but you can have a number of files for different situations, couldn't you? So it could be that at one point on your server you want to spawn in a kind of deathmatch location. So that'd be one set of JSONs. And maybe at other times you'll be spawning in like a race course, a car race course, so that would be another one. Any persistent item, that usually the majority of types within the type.xml will be spawned once again after the server restart. So we go. Parameters: type string name, class name of the object to be spawned, vector pos, position of the object in the world, vector YPR, orientations, your pitch and roll in degrees. So again, maybe we can have buildings leaning over on the side. What's interesting as well is, again, these are all building sort of things, gates. We might well be able to spawn in objects as well, like this. Who knows? And the big question we've got as well about this is, when you spawn in a building like this, will it have loot spawning in it? Not sure. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll have to play around with that. Wow, well, we have covered an awful lot of ground here, haven't we? But the DayZ 115 experimental release, very exciting, lots of great stuff, especially for console modders. And I think it's very exciting for console players as well, because all those imaginative console modders are going to be able to dive in and come up with wonderful ways of doing stuff. Especially, the beauty of being able to spawn buildings in using JSON is that I don't think you suffer the same clipping problems that you have when you're using events. So if you try and spawn in buildings with events, what happens is if stuff's too close together, they don't spawn in properly. But with JSON, I think we're not going to come into that problem. And then you've got this amazing thing, being able to remove the clipping restraints from players being able to build it in the world, which I think can be very, very cool indeed. Whew, so there we go. A long video. What do you think? Put your questions and comments down below. If it's been useful, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And I will, of course, see you again soon.